Before we start, welcome to Akri's September community meeting. Akri's meetings are governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct that summarizes down to be a nice person and also provides a community and response mechanism for if you do feel like you are not comfortable in the community. So happy to be with the CNCF on that front. These meetings are recorded. The recording button has already been hit. But if you would like to not be recorded or not be seen, feel free to turn off your camera or hop off the call if you're more comfortable with that. And we post these to our YouTube channel at the end of the meeting. And you can find links to that YouTube channel and all in the meeting notes, which are on a HackMD that I just put in the chat. This meeting normally takes place on Tuesdays. We bumped it so that a few more people could attend today, but life is life, so it can be hard to kind of make meetings. So, but next month we'll be back to the Tuesday cadence. One of the announcements, let me see if I can, I can share my screen now. Great. So our announcements for the day. Let's go to view mode here. So KubeCon North America is coming up in October. Rashid, are you going to be there? I know you were at the past one.
Yes, I'll actually be at KubeCon North America.
Awesome.
This time around, I have a couple of talks.
Okay, congrats. I know, yeah, you're always submitting a lot, so I'm gonna look them up on the schedule. Very exciting. Cool. Well, I will see your sheet there, and anyone else who's at KubeCon, feel free to stop by. I don't think we're gonna have an Akri booth this year, but I will be talking about Akri as part of a talk that I'm giving on user experience for device consumption in Kubernetes. So that talk basically discusses how more and more people are trying to discover or trying to find ways to easily use devices like these constrained IoT devices with Kubernetes. And so this talk talks about some of the approaches to that. So Akri being one, and how there's a group that's also putting in a Kubernetes enhancement proposal, or a KEP, called dynamic resource allocation, that is about kind of enabling the Akri flow in Kubernetes core itself, but it still has a bit of a different feature set. So it's going to be a bit of a compare and contrast talk, and motivation to either help on the community side with Akri or help push forward the KEP. And there's going to be like a bit of a technical discussion about the implementation proposed by the KEP as well. And there's Intel folks are the ones who have been working on that for a while. And so on the agenda, I can talk to the first one, but so Akri has been running end-to-end tests on every single version of Kubernetes since CRDs, since Akri started. So that's Kubernetes 1.16, which means about, I think it's 9 versions of Kubernetes, or maybe a little less, but across MicroK8s, K3s, and vanilla Kubernetes are running a full install Kubernetes to test end-to-end suite. First of all, that's a lot of runs. Personally, there's some implications there on like time and like resource usage environmentally. But most importantly to right now, some of them are starting to fail just because of end of life issues and in particular Kubernetes version 1.16. So Rashid already helped push up a change that's getting rid of 1.16, and even more so put in a really good change so that we're using containerd now as our default container runtime. Previously we were using Docker shim, which is no longer the default, and so we need to get with the people and move forward a little bit on that. So this is helping bump us on that. So this will probably fix that immediate concern, and I think then we're going to want to follow up that removes all that are end of life. So I think these are the ones that Audie looked up. Let's see. So you can see that we've been testing since 1.16, but that went end of life a couple years ago, actually. So we really only need to be testing. I don't know. I feel like we should test more than just what is not end of life. Because I do feel like some people are still running 1.19 and 1.20. So I don't know if we need some nuance to this conversation, or do we want to just be strict and say, if it's end of life, we aren't testing it, and we're just going to test 1.22 all the way up to 1.25. Do you all have thoughts on this?
In my original comment on the GitHub issue, I mostly just said that maybe we could just test the last end of life version, so like 1.21 all the way to, I think we're at 1.25 now. That's what was just like a suggestion, given that I figured since some people might be using older versions that still might be out of life, but we want to test it just to make sure. But if you think people are using 1.19 and 1.20 more, maybe we can include more of those versions. No real strong suggestions either way, but I definitely think we should test at least all of the active versions right now.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good approach. Let's try and make it common to keep the last EOL, so 1.21, and all the ones that are in life. We still need to add support for some of the more recent ones. I believe we only test up to 1.23. So that'll be good to get us up to date anyways. And then that could be a part of the release cadence. I can add that to, we have a HackMD on release cadence, so I can add it to that. And that seems like a good approach. So Audie, are you good adding that change, pushing up that change?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and remove the older ones and then do everything from 1.21 all the way above.
All right. Great.
I can also note take if you want. I was just writing it on the side and then.
Okay, either way. Yeah. Great. And okay, so then I believe that's all that we have of that conversation there. Next up is Akri's release cadence. Do you want to take that over, Audie?
Yeah, so in terms of the actual release itself, I think we were planning on doing a release out this month. We'll get the last few issues in, and then we can go ahead and kick off the entire process. I think we have one PR out for the Rust toolchain update and things like that. We'll do this one with the test cadences. As for a regular release cycle, or I guess before we even go into that, we've had a lot of changes since the last release of Akri. Should we go ahead and do, instead of just doing a patch version update, should we just do a minor version update, or how do we want to define each of those?
So normally the version updates come with each change. So as the changes happen, that's when the patch or the minor version update. So if nothing that we did elicited a patch or a minor version update, then we usually snap the release at whatever we're at, assuming and trusting that we made the right decisions there. We should maybe then, it sounds like, take a look back and see if we didn't version something correctly. So are you thinking, what are you thinking for testing this release? Are you thinking a bug bash? Or are you just going to run some side tests to kind of test scenarios? Usually it's helpful to look at and seeing what's changed since the last release and kind of see if there are some major scenarios that need to be tested.
I believe Michael was planning on doing a bug bash. He was saying that we haven't done one in a while and we sort of should just test everything. I can go ahead and pull up a change log and see what we've committed since the last release. I believe some of them were just minor documentation changes, others were just tool chains and just general quality of life updates.
Yeah, I also can take a look at that on our shared screen right here.
Oh, thanks.
I would really like to move our OPC way stuff out so we don't keep getting this vulnerability flag. For context, our samples are, one of our sample brokers is OPCUA, and it requires a lot of updates because there seem to be quite a fair bit of OPCUA vulnerabilities in the .NET SDK potentially. And we haven't been keeping up with it. So we are getting things like this. While instead we should move our samples outside of Akri's core repository so that we can understand when a vulnerability is on Akri's core internal functionality or on a sample which we aren't recommending people use in production scenarios anyways. So that's like a huge thing that needs to happen. So if anyone's open to doing that, please ping like one of the code owners, because then they can make a new repository within Project Akri for them, which we could go ahead and do and kind of like have that there so that someone then can just like PR the change in there. But it'll also require some changes in the workflows for building and testing those. But it would be a very cool change. Also, you would then be pushing the majority of code to a repository. So have a lot of ownership of that code base in a sense. Okay. Where were we going? Why are we here?
We were checking the change log for the release.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our last release was version 0.8.4. It might be easy to look at pull requests is kind of what I like to start at. Okay, so release was here. So since that release, we've done some just like maintenance work, maintenance work, maintenance work. Maintenance work. Okay, so we did some, we built out our Helm charts to allow for setting environment variables and brokers in a different format. It not just like more of the Kubernetes style secrets environment variables, config map supports, and maybe bulked up our volume support and the templates themselves so that you don't have to kind of build your own template, play around with YAML. Instead, you can pass in arguments and it will apply the appropriate configuration. Maintenance. Yeah, I see this being as mainly maintenance with some user experience changes. So let me make sure there's not. Yeah. So I think we're good to not be too concerned about testing. Like if for a bug bash, I don't really know. I would test this was a fairly big change, but it only made things more like increased functionality. It's mainly this PR that needs to be tested. In the sense, we just mainly need to test our Helm templates, but that's not a huge issue because worst case, someone changes the formatting of their configuration manually. Ideally, that doesn't need to happen, but it wouldn't affect core functionality. So I don't feel super concerned about this release process needing to be too involved. But I think we should strive for having a bigger feature set for the next release so that we do have make some bigger changes. So maybe that can be a part of the release too, is figuring out what we want to prioritize for next release. But yeah, so those were, I guess, the change logs. I'll pass it back to you, Adi. Kind of talk about it in general.
Perfect. Yeah, since it's mostly quality of life updates, we'll probably end up just doing a small bug bash. I'll have Michael post in the Slack and we can go ahead and go from there. So yeah, we'll maintain it as like a patch version change. We won't go ahead and do the minor version then. We can leave it at like whatever version we're at right now. And then, so I'm expecting probably sometime like middle of next week, we'll be ready for the bug bash. I'll talk with Michael and see when we could do the exact timeline and go from there. I believe he's out right now, so we'd have to do it a little bit later. Other than that, I think, yeah, we're the last PR that has to be checked in is like the Rust version one, and then would we want to consider like adding the Kubernetes one before we do the release? I'm happy to do it. Just want to know, like, should we like wait on the release for that one, or should we go ahead and start the release and then add
That should definitely go before the release / in conjunction. One of the release steps you can see here is to update to use latest K8's version. So that's a part of the release steps anyways.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I think all of these are important things to do. So usually that is a key step. Sounds like we've already done the latest Rust version. Test and updating Tarplin's been done. So there's a lot of things that have been updated, but still several things to go. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'll add that as well before we do the release then.
Yeah, just look through this. It should be, and if anything's missing, we should keep updating this document.
Okay, thanks. I think that covers all of the release. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to talk about in particular?
Around the release?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, around the release, not in general. Yeah.
Okay. No, I think this release is good to get out. I think we should talk about if there's features that we want to go in the next release. But that can be in the future / asynchronously in Akri Slack. As for next on the agenda, we don't have anything else, so it would be moving to issue triage. But is there anything that anyone wants to chat about? We have a lot of time. So is there anything front of mind for folks?
I can get started with a quick question. You mentioned that issue of moving these samples to a different like repo. Is there already an issue tracking that, or is that a new issue we need to create?
That's a great question. Yeah. Here it is.
Perfect. Thanks.
I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yeah.
Cool. I'll put it in chat here. Yeah, so this would be a really good thing to do.
I think we could also tag this as like a good first issue, maybe.
I don't know about that because it requires that repository to exist first, since they can't create it. If we want, I can go ahead and create an examples repository so that, should I do that? Do we want to just go for that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll put that to do on me. It's hard to choose between examples and samples for this word, but I'll think about that. Okay. Cool. Do folks have other questions or other thoughts? Great. Okay. All right, do you want to take over on the issue triage, Audie?
Sure. Could you oh yeah, I can share my screen, yeah. Let me know when you can see my screen. Uh, Actually, Kate, could you allow me to share my screen? I think since I made you host, it's blocked.
There you go.
Thanks. Awesome. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So I think from the ones that were in progress,
So I think the first step should be to pull in new issues. So if you go to add cards in the upper right corner, a little farther down, yep. You'll pull in all of those issues that are issues. So I think, I don't know if that's pull, yeah, so yeah, just drag those into triage needed.
yeah, all the other ones I believe are PRs. Okay, perfect. We don't need to have the PRs, right?
Nope.
I can go over, I guess, I can go over the in progress ones first, and then maybe we can go ahead sort of backwards. The ANSI term one, I believe you have a PR out for this one already. So once that gets checked in, we should be good to go on that. What else is there? For reducing the size of the Akri containers, yeah, actually, I could bring up like the discussion I had a little bit offline about this. Instead of using Docker Slim, I was wondering if we should maybe consider using a different type
Here, will
of.
you open up the issue or
Oh,
provide some context for folks?
yeah. Cool. So I assume you can still see the issue. The issue now. Yeah. So originally when we were using like building our Akri agents and the Akri containers itself, we have a general size of about like 160 megabytes, varying across the agent itself. And then Kate did an investigation and saw that we could use something like Docker Slim to maybe cut down the size of the containers to roughly like 30 MB, which is like a great size reduction. Now, that like investigation was done with Docker Slim, and the goal was to see if we could just cut down the size of the containers and upload them so that the run time and everything would be a lot smaller. But with Docker Slim, the way I noticed how it did it with this investigation was that it basically tarballed like the Linux user space and then would just unpack it and start installing different tools. Whereas I feel like it reduces the readability. When we look at the Docker file itself that it produced, it was a little bit, it was like hard to read, and it was sacrificing like readability for the sake of the performance. But I think we could sort of get both. The agents themselves were built off of, I believe it was like a Debian Slim container, and there are newer versions of that that could take us to about 75 MB, which should be slim enough for like a first pass. And then maybe if we want to do another pass, we could do it again. I spoke with Roa about this as well. Roa was saying that this isn't like a super high priority, so we could do that. But I do want to get everyone's thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think changing things to Debian Slim sounds like it would take 2 minutes. Like I
Yeah.
don't see any reason not to make that high priority if it's that simple. Like there should be an issue or someone should just go do that like right now. If it really is just we need to make it Debian Slim. like that would be good to do before a release. The reason why I think this is higher priority is Akri is young still and trying to get community adoption. We're made for edge scenarios. Like that's the reason we used Rust. And our binary sizes are small. So I think our binary sizes range from 14 megabytes in discovery handlers, maybe even 10 in some, to 24, which is the reason why I was shocked by the size of our containers. And when we've spoken at conferences in the past, one of the top questions we get is, what size are you? And it's quite unfortunate for people not to play around because they can't fit Akri on the Raspberry Pi 4 anymore. So I think it is a priority. And like I was saying, like, I don't recommend using Docker Slim. I wanted to show how far we could go. And so I think this is like very interesting to see how someone who's just really good at Docker files, which clearly wasn't me who made these, could really improve this. So yeah, I think we should do Debian Slim now. Is that what it's called? It's just Debian Slim latest?
So I think there are multiple versions of it. The one we do use like a slimmed down container, but the newest version of one of the containers was like half the size of what we use. I made like a test Docker file. Let me see if I could pull it up. Or here, I believe it should be Debian Slim. But yeah, I can go ahead and find it afterwards, I guess. But overall, I think it was we use like one Slim container, and there's like a newer version of it that is just half the size of what we get.
Cool. Would you be down just to push up a change that changes all of them to use that?
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that. It's a pretty straightforward thing.
Cool. And I don't think that would close out the issue. But I think I would link that that PR to the issue. So like ref it, so that we can keep this as a running issue. For if we do find someone who is passionate about Docker, they can take an even deeper look. I think part of this is looking at Akri's crate system and seeing how many crates we're using. I did run like a week or so ago, a cargo tool that I don't remember what it was called, but essentially looked if we had unused dependencies, and it couldn't find any, but it's apparently not great at nested dependencies. So I think someone could probably go in and look at that too at some point. And I think we do have an issue on that as well, but there's some cleanup and slim down that could be done. Cool.
Yeah, I think Harrison, Vincent's having someone else also like look into Akri, so I can show Harrison this, and maybe Harrison can start taking a look and see what else we could do. But I definitely agree that we should, at least for the first part, do the quick like 2-line change and go ahead and go with it.
Okay.
So that's that issue. Let's go ahead and look at the other ones. So this is the IPv6 camera. That's up. Kate, could you give some more context with this?
So this is a fairly old issue, but Akri does not support IPv6 cameras. And I went through a bit of an investigation on this. I mean, this was a long time ago. This was like a year ago, so I don't have my full reasoning, but I think I hopefully set the scene there in that last one. I can't read it right now. Do you mind pausing? Okay. Yeah, essentially the discovery mechanism we're using, I think it's along the lines of it doesn't allow passing in the interface to say for looking for cameras, and we need to not only know what interface the IPv6 camera's on, but also pass it into kind of our discovery ping. And so it would just require a change in our implementation, I believe. But I don't remember more than that. But this is going to remain to be an open issue, I believe, until someone prioritizes it.
Okay, it's currently under the in progress, I believe. Should we keep it there or should we keep it as a backlog? I don't think we've done any work on it just yet.
Yeah, I would put it into backlog.
Okay.
Good idea.
Cool. And then is there anything else we should talk about on that item, or should we go ahead and move on?
No, I think we can move on. And maybe start with the issue that hasn't been triaged yet as well. Could work.
Okay.
The one you pulled in at the beginning on the far left.
Oh, yeah, got it.
So for context on this, I think most of us on this call have experienced this, but for some reason we require when you push up a PR, you bump the version. And you have to push a commit with the version change. It would be better if we had a system where you could just add a flag to a PR that said major, minor, or patch. And then when the PR merges, we had a workflow that does that change for you. It does the bump, because otherwise we have to synchronize when PRs go in. So say Rashid's working on a PR and I'm working on a PR, which is happening right now. Then if Rashid's PR goes in, say we're both at version 0.8.19, I don't know what we're at right now. We both bumped to 0.8.20. So we're ready to merge essentially, but Rashid merges. Mine still says it's ready to merge when I need to bump again. So usually the way we work around that is just maintainers focus on that and look at that before they press merge and tell the contributor, hey, we need you to bump again. But contributors are like not always looking, and they want to be able to have this clean experience of contributing, not having to go back and keep bumping their versions. So I think it would be great if we just had a workflow that did this, and it would essentially, we already have our script, so the workflow would just run the script, taking into account the flags that were specified.
I think that'd be great.
And Rashid, that sounds awesome. If you're willing to kind of take this one on, having had experience doing something similar, that would be awesome, especially since you understand the experience. So also the need.
Sure.
Cool. So
Rashid,
I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Rashid, could I assign you to the issue then?
I also added a comment on the issue. Asking permission. Sure.
Awesome, sure.
I think you can go ahead and move it to in progress in the least.
Perfect, done.
Cool. And so I guess then we don't normally go through the in progress ones, but I really like doing this. I think this is really smart, Adi, because we found things that we haven't looked at. So I like the idea of just going through the final 6 that we have in progress.
Okay. We talked about the containers. The empty term has a PR out. I believe that was the one that we can just open it real quick, but I believe there was an issue on the K8s test here. Oh, there's a PR right here.
Yeah, that's what's
Yeah.
blocking it.
Yeah.
So it'll go through soon.
Yeah, that's fine. Other than that, this one is just documentation, I believe. This is from 2021 as well. Here, let me show the actual issue. But Kate, if you have any, if you remember, like this was from a long time ago as well. So
I mean, this is basically saying we need to bulk out our developer guide. Will you scroll back to the bottom?
sure.
I feel like this can, I'm not clear on anymore exactly what it wants changed, like exactly what we need added to our docs. I would be comfortable removing the keep alive and closing this, but the main, or trying to resurface opinions on what needs to change, because I don't remember exactly what needs to be changed. I'm far removed from someone joining the project's developer experience. So also, if anyone on the call has feedback on that, maybe you can add some context to this to say like where you found the developer guide and build process not fully documented, because I think that would be very helpful. But for me, I don't know where to take this because I'm so far removed from it. Any thoughts on this?
I'm sort of like at the midpoint where originally I was like very, very like close to the dev doc, and there were a few things I think we noticed were different, mainly just like versioning and but I think that was all already fixed. So right now I'm not really sure what we need to change. I can go through it again and see if there's anything I think would be different. Maybe as Harrison starts looking at this, I can have Harrison like take a look and see like if there's anything that could be made more clear. And along with that, I can just keep those notes and we can circle back to this after.
Okay. Maybe remove the keep alive for now, because it sounds like we're certainly not sure that this is crucial. So
Okay. Cool. Okay, I think that's that one. Let's see, node selector and Helm. This is also an old one from about a year ago.
so this had
and
a PR associated with it. If you scroll down, that PR was like pretty much ready to merge.
okay, let's.
So if you go to all the way to the bottom of the PR, I'm just curious what the status was when it ended. All the way at the bottom. Okay. Yeah, so I think this fits the category of something that someone could probably pick up the work on. But I would move this to backlog.
Okay.
Just in the issue.
Yeah. And I think the keep alive tag on it is okay as well. Okay, so we can move on to the
Just
next.
move that one. We don't need to open all of them. So for the core one, just move that to backlog.
Okay.
Essentially, we had a contributor, Giovanni, who's really active at the beginning. And he was working on a co-op discovery handler, which was pretty much done. But then we built out our discovery handler interface and we needed to port all the changes over to it. So this would be something that if anyone was interested in adding a new discovery handler to Akri, this would be a great one to pick up. I would ping Giovanni first and say, hey, if you're very busy and don't feel like you want to move this forward, but would be willing to have someone else do that, I would love to do that, like something along those lines. Because then you could kind of see the process of building a discovery handler and use something that was like pretty much ready to go. Cool.
Cool. With that, I think we've gone through all the in progress ones.
I think we can leave it at that then.
Yeah. For the new discovery handler, I think Joseph and I will maybe take a look at that and see what we could do.
Cool. There's another, I guess if we're using this time to highlight important issues, there's one in particular that's really important. Let me find it. I think Michael was gonna work on it, but I'm not sure if he's been able to. I'm just filtering by assignees. Yeah. So this is like a pretty important one. That it runs a line between, it's a bug. It's a very big bug on Akri. I put it in the chat, and requires some design thinking and a larger implementation. That I think this should be the priority of the next release. So essentially with Akri, by default, we create one broker or one workload for every device that's discovered. So if you have cameras and you want a broker that's pulling the frames from that camera, we deploy that broker and mount the connectivity information for its camera. What if you want to deploy your own broker, not have Akri's controller do it, and you want that one broker to use 2 cameras? So in your deployment, you request camera 1 and camera 2 and your resource requests. Well, Akri only has one environment variable name for that connectivity information. So camera 1 will write, it's like Akri will set both camera 1 and camera 2's connectivity information to the same environment variable in 2 different steps asynchronously. So therefore only camera 2's connectivity information will be mounted into the pod. So that's pretty big of an issue if you want to use Akri to use multiple devices of the same type. The issue doesn't occur, say you want to use a USB thermometer and a camera, it's fine because those environment variables are named differently. But if you use the same 2 devices of the same discovery mechanism, it's a pretty big issue. Does that make sense?
A little bit, yes. At like a high level, it does, but
Do you want to ask any follow-up questions on that? Or like maybe let me know what you gathered from that and I can repeat it in a different way too.
I'm still reading through the issue, but what it sounds like is that like per device there should be the environment variable, right? As opposed to just one overall that they all look up to.
Yeah, I actually haven't read the issue in a while either. I was trying to just verbally summarize it. So just to verbally say it, we have one environment variable name for IP cameras. If I discover 2 IP cameras and want the same pod to use them, IP camera connectivity information is going to be written to twice. So only one connectivity string will remain in that environment variable, despite 2 cameras being requested for that pod. Does that make sense? So I don't remember what I proposed for the solution, but I think yeah, okay, potential solution would be to, oh yeah, okay, so I was saying have a suffix for the environment variable name. So then essentially in your broker, instead of knowing exactly the name of the environment variable to look up, you would know the prefix of the environment variable to look up. So you would do the equivalent of like a printm grep. I don't know if that's tricky though. Like I don't know if there's a better way to do it. Like, yeah. Another, because you can't, I believe there was an issue where you couldn't essentially comma separate it for some reason. So, because that would be another way is like parsed by a delimiter. But another option, just thinking off the top of my head, would be to have another environment variable that Akri adds that contains a comma separated list of all the environment variables. So, and that could be added separately. Yeah. But I'll put a comment here. Okay, I added a comment there. But that's something where if no one's interested in taking it on, maybe I'll look at that for the next release.
Perfect. Yeah, I added a note to say that like that would be prioritized for the next release. So at least when we go through that next time, we'll have like a note of this issue.
Cool. Added a note in our meeting notes.
Yeah, it'll be in the meeting notes. I just have a separate document that I'm adding, and then at the end I'll just paste it in there.
Okay, cool.
But I think that would be all the issues then. I think that summarizes like the issue triage. Is there anything else in particular anyone wanted to talk about? Cool. If
Awesome.
not,
Well,
go ahead.
I think our next meeting will be back to the Tuesday cadence likely. Yeah, and in the meantime, excited to see how the release goes, and yeah, it'll be fun. And then I will see your sheet at KubeCon, but maybe at the meeting before that too. So awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I will see you all later.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.